Hello. Okay. Hey Bjorn, this is David. I figured I would answer via video. It's a lot easier for me, and this way I can give full answers to your questions as opposed to typing it out, which can take a while, and sometimes I'll end up being shorter. This is the first time I'm looking at your questions, so these are the earnest, honest answers. Your first question is, how did you get the idea to use crowdfunding to fund journalism? So the idea came from a few different places. I think one of the most important, or I guess one of the more obvious parts of the story is I was the research assistant for a guy named Jeff Howe, who coined the phrase crowdsourcing. And so I was his research assistant, and one of the chapters was crowdfunding, and so I started looking into Kiva.org and Donors Choose, and really I was just thinking about how can that be applied to journalism. And I worked a lot that's the main aspect of it. Is I was really just looking at other crowdfunding sites and saying, well, what does this look like if it's journalism? When did you turn over Spotus to the Public Insight Network, and why? So we turned over to the Public Insight Network December. I think officially it was December 1st or something like that. Basically December of last year. So it's been about 6 months. I can't believe it. And we talked with, that process took about 6 to 9 months. I can't really remember. So it's been, we've been talking to them for a while. And there are a few reasons why. I mean, one is I personally have been doing Spotus for about 4 years. And you ask about, I see, how many people there were. And it was really just me for a long time. And so, I wanted to be part of a team. I thought, American Public Media had the opportunity to expand Spotus and grow it. At the time, they had their chief digital officer was based in Oakland, and I was living in Oakland, and they had a team in Oakland, so I thought that was kind of cool. That team is no longer there. But so there are a bunch of different reasons why it seemed like it was a really good thing to do, and in the end, I needed to both pass it on, and let it sort of grow without me, and just move on to do something different. How big was your team when starting Spotus, and how many people were working at it when you left Spotus? So I am the sole founder of Spotus. Of course, I worked with a lot of different people. I worked with a development shop in the beginning, as well as 2 sort of freelance designers, all of whom I'm still friends with. They're great people. And then I forget, maybe a year and a half, about 8 or 9 months in, I worked with another woman. So there were 2 of us at one point, and then she left. She got a Fulbright, and eventually I hired a CTO. The CTO was with Spotus for a good 2.5, maybe 3 years. And really it was just me and him, and at one point we had one other person with us, so at our height we were 3 people. When we joined American Public Media, it was just the 2 of us. Would you change anything if you had the chance to start over with Spotus again? I mean, yeah, of course there are things about the site I would change, the design that we launched with, whereas the design we end with I think is better, and things like that. But in terms of overall, there's no major things that I feel like I regret or wish I had done differently, etc. Things like that. I'm pretty happy with everything. My analysis shows that the majority of people who contribute texts or other forms of stories consider themselves as seasoned journalists. Can you confirm that? And what do you believe is the reason for this? I mean, it depends on what you mean by seasoned journalists. I think the majority of them do see themselves as professional journalists and want to do journalism for a living. Seasoned, I mean, we did work a lot with young reporters. We worked with, I'd say a good chunk of them were younger reporters, actually. And in fact, you do ask if there's someone who did scientific study of Spotus. There was, and she might have some of the stats on that might be helpful to you in terms of seasoned or unseasoned, things like that. My analysis shows the majority of people who contribute text are the majority of Spotus users submits only 1 or 2 articles. Do you have any notion why? I mean, it's interesting. We did have a few reporters who are a specific type of user who did 6, 7, 8, etc. pitches. There are a few who did definitely, more than one, 3 or 4, things like that. But in the end, I think Spotus is not meant to sustain an entire person's career. That's not what it's for. I think it's, if you're a freelancer, it's supposed to be something that you're juggling a lot of different things, and this is something that you can use. And there are certainly organizations we worked with who, whether or not the user, the reporter, only did it once, the organization often did it a bunch of times with a different reporter each time. So that might be another thing to check into. More than half of the articles published on Spotus are texts, mostly with pictures or graphs. Articles that make use of multimedia form of presentation are scarce. Do you believe this is surprising for an internet-based platform? A little bit, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it's surprising. I'd say it obviously, doing more multimedia would have been great. I think the emphasis on Spotus was to do original reporting, and I wouldn't say investigative journalism, but certainly sort of accountability journalism. Whether that is in the form of text or multimedia was less important, I think, to us and maybe to the readers and the reporters and the donors, etc. The big majority of the articles found on Spotus have their geographical focus on California. Do you believe it would be possible to widen this focus further? Yes, absolutely. It started in San Francisco, and actually when we launched, we only did stories in San Francisco. So that was a constraint that we put on, and then eventually we widened it to Los Angeles as well. So, and then even after we sort of widened it to all over the place, because we sort of had built a base in California, I think that's what you're seeing. But I see no reason why it couldn't work elsewhere. Do you believe in similar platforms as Spotus would work in other countries as well? Certainly. The one thing I have been told is that, I mean, it's hard for me to know that, really. I mean, I certainly believe similar platforms as Spotus could work in other countries. I do think there would be different challenges. So, for example, Spotus is a nonprofit, and in the United States, philanthropy is very big. In the UK, for example, though, people are already charged £70 each, or I think $70, for the BBC. So to ask them then to donate more money when they're already being taxed $70 for the BBC, it might not be quite the same as here, where people are taxed, I think it's under $1, 70 cents or something minimal for NPR. They might be more willing to donate here. But again, that might be more of a political, positioning. Culturally, I don't think it's. There's no reason why it couldn't work anywhere. Do you believe, as a journalist, it would be possible to earn a living by using crowdfunding today or in the future? I believe it's possible to earn a decent wage for certain things. Would it be a full-time living? I think it could be for a small percentage. I think the majority of people can use crowdfunding from time to time, but not to sustain their entire career. I think in the future, a small percentage of people might be able to sustain their entire career that way, but the majority of people will be able to use crowdfunding from time to time. What do you believe is the future of Spotus? Will it continue growing, or will it remain at its current level? I honestly don't know. I'm always rooting for Spotus. I'm not in the day-to-day anymore. I do think, regardless of where Spotus is, this is what I would call low-hanging fruit for journalism in terms of revenue. I think people sometimes get a little bit caught up on the platform of Spotus and the brand of Spotus, which is great and it's flattering, but Spotus was always trying to prove a point, which is that crowdfunding, this idea, is low-hanging fruit for journalists. And it's very easy for any journalism organization or any independent freelancer to do crowdfunding with or without Spotus. And so I always want to evangelize the concept more than anything else. So I am going to send this URL to you, and I believe I'm going to also try and find the name and email of the USC person who has done a full study on Spotus.